Good evening. I'm Amanda Kraus. I'm the CEO of US Rowing, and I'm really pleased to be here this evening with you and with three of my colleagues from the team. We have Rich Cacioppo, Sarah McAuliffe, and Jenny Trays, and they're all going to introduce themselves. I want to mention that we're changing the format of these town halls, and we will be focusing on a different topic in each of these quarterly town halls. So instead of just doing a broad overview of US rowing each quarter, we're really going to focus on a specific topic. So let me turn my texts off. Sorry about that. And this evening's topic, as most of you probably know, is focused on venue selection. So this is an area, venue and vendor selection has actually been an area that both the board and myself have been interested in really diving into as an organization since I started. But in my first year, I realized there was not enough bandwidth to actually tackle this very large but very important piece for the organization. So it was only with Jenny, Jenny and Rich coming on board in January that we started to really look into this. And it's, like I said, a super important topic and one that we take very seriously. We've gotten a lot of feedback about where we should be holding regattas. And we wanted to really take an opportunity to make sure that we're sharing our thinking on this, the factors we take into consideration, spend some time with the team, and I think most importantly, be able to answer your questions and respond to your concerns. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, and then Sarah and Rich will speak. And then our goal is around 8:20 East Coast time to make sure that we're beginning to answer your questions and respond to questions, concerns you all have. So without further ado, I'll send it over to you, Jenny.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm really excited for this town hall. Specifically, as Amanda mentioned, we've gotten a lot of feedback, and I'm excited to kind of share our latest thinking, which is a work in progress, and kind of build some transparency around where we are. So if I haven't met you yet, my name is Jenny Trays. I am the head of community impact or community engagement here at US Rowing. So I get to work with the Stem to Stern team. I get to work on adaptive rowing and veterans rowing, and working on diversity, equity, and inclusion with our new associate, Jess Jackson, and the DEI committee. I'm really excited to be here. Prior to US Rowing, I rowed for 4 years at Bucknell University. I spent 10 years at Row New York, and the last 2 years at a sports technology company called League Apps, running their community as well. So really look forward to connecting with all of you one day. And thanks again for being here. And I will turn it over to Sarah.
Hey, everyone. My name's Sarah McAuliffe. I'm the director of events with US Rowing. I know I see some of you guys in the chat, and I've seen many of you at regattas this past season, as early as last week. So thank you for being in Oak Ridge if we did see you. In my past, I rowed for Tennessee and University of Tennessee, and then was the LOC director at Oak Ridge. So currently, I hold the role of director of events and have been working with my team, Reggie Robinson and Paul Wilkins, to host the events this season. And we're already planning for 23, 24, 25 and on. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Sarah. And I am also encouraged that I'm seeing more and more names that I recognize in the participants list. So 6 months in, and starting to see some familiar faces, at least virtually. So my name is Rich Cacioppo, and I'm the Chief Program Officer for US Rowing. That includes our membership, our regattas and events, our learning and development education programs, youth and masters programs, and safety and well-being. So obviously, as part of this role, our venue selection and our regattas is a top priority for me. And we've been working on this since, shortly after Jenny and I started, for what our long-term plans are. So what I'd like to do over the next 10 or 15 minutes is just walk this group through some of our current thinking. And I will say that this is still preliminary, and that we're iterating on this both internally and externally with partners. But I wanted to give this group the opportunity to kind of see how we're thinking about this problem space, some of the factors that we have to consider, and then share our timeline as we look through the rest of this year and the next several years. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and kick it off, and please add any of your questions into the Q&A. And then after I finish up, we'll start tackling those. So I wanted us to start with a problem statement, which is going to be probably very obvious and maybe painfully obvious for many of you on the Zoom. And that is that there aren't enough viable competition venues in the US to fulfill our mission. And as we think about championing participation and the passionate pursuit of excellence, as well as knowing that the number one need and want from our member base is to participate and compete, this is critical for us to deliver value to all of our stakeholders as the national governing body. So as we approach this, I wanted to step back and talk about priorities from a regatta perspective first, before we get into the venue analysis specifically. And if any of you read the letter that Jenny and I sent out to the community several weeks ago about venue selection, this may look familiar to you. These are the 5 priorities that we have for delivering regattas. Call this sort of the hierarchy of needs for regattas. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but they are safety, fairness, access, comfort, and delight, which, while it's at the top of the pyramid, should be something that we strive to deliver across experiences at our regattas. So what do we mean by each of those? For safety, obviously has to be the top priority for any time we're bringing members together and stakeholders to compete or spectate at one of our regattas. That is on the course while racing. That is while our participants are at a venue that we're hosting a regatta at. And both of these things, in our view, are related to whole health, physical, mental, and emotional, while our athletes and spectators are at a venue for one of our regattas. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, how that relates to some of our recent conversations. The second is fairness. So after ensuring that everybody is safe at one of our regattas, it's ensuring that we're delivering competition that is fair. So that is on the course, having the right number and quality of referees. It is about ensuring that the bid system for invitationals and progressions through a regatta are fair. And of course, it's so important that we have consistency. That's everything from consistency and reliability and timing to the way that we apply rules and policies at our regattas. The third, after we account for safety and fairness, is access. And access is really about the financial components for our stakeholders and for US Rowing. So that is, what is the cost to compete for our athletes? And that's not just the cost of a regatta entry fee, that's the cost of travel and the cost of lodging and all the ancillary expenses that go along with joining us at one of our regattas. The second is the cost to serve. What is the cost for US Rowing to deliver the experience at our regattas? And the third is an overarching priority around sustainability. When we think about sustainability, it's not just being able to hold our breath and deliver a regatta this one year. It's about creating a repeatable model where we want to bring more people to our events and we want to host more events because we can deliver them efficiently and at a high level. The fourth priority is comfort. And comfort can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But we think about that in terms of community. That's the community that we bring together at these regattas. It's also the state and local community in which the venue and the regatta takes place. It's the amenities that we have both at the regatta, at the venue site, and in the surrounding community. And then it's about the activities that we offer, whether that is while you're walking around the venue, while you're at the regatta competing, or while you're in the local area. And then finally, delight, which again can mean different things for different people. But I think there are 3 really critical categories for us as we think about delivering experiences that have delight. One of them is development within the sport of rowing. If the number one priority of our member base is around competition, the second highest one is around education, learning, and development. So how do we bring more experiences to our regattas that help our athletes, our coaches, our referees, and other stakeholders grow in the sport that they love? The second is making our events even more about celebration. Celebration, not just on the race course, but of our identities in our community. And the third is personalization. We have a very diverse stakeholder base and member base with different needs. How do we make it feel like when a member or an athlete shows up at our venues that they feel like it was tailor-made for them? That is a very tall order, but one that we take seriously long-term to deliver value to all of our members. So that's sort of an intro into Regatta Priorities. A critical component around our regatta is obviously the venues that we select. So next, I want to walk through briefly sort of an analysis model that we've begun for how we think about the venues that we could consider in the future for US Rowing. And there are 6 components here, and I'll move quickly to the slide that provides a little bit more detail on them. But they are course quality, competition infrastructure, regatta infrastructure, venue economics, local values, and venue convenience. So course quality is really the geographic elements of a place where we might hold a regatta. It is dimensions, it is the length of the course, it is the width of the course and how many lanes it can support, it's the depth of the water to meet class course standards. Current wind and obstructions, the things that can impact safety and fairness at racing. And then another one, which is becoming more and more of a concern and something that we need to solve, is climate, weather, and water. Whether it was Clark County canceling Northwest Masters because of E. coli, which I think we can draw a fairly straight line to climate change too. It's the challenges of holding regattas in the Smile States during the summer when it can be very hot and humid. And then finally, it's water quality issues, which are continuing to grow. So if you think about course quality, this is sort of the foundation, the bare bones of what we need to have in order to deliver a high quality experience. And as I walk through these others, I'm not going to go into as much detail about each. I think they should be fairly self-explanatory. Competition infrastructure is really about the stuff that we have to deliver competition and do so at scale. Waterway usage might be one that's not as readily apparent to some folks on the call, but our ability to actually hold a multi-day regatta because of competing uses for the waterways. Moving on to regatta infrastructure, this is everything from trailer space to sufficient parking, an area where we can have a protected athlete section, sufficient security, police presence, and things like network connectivity and communications, which are becoming increasingly important for us to deliver a high quality experience at a regatta. Venue economics, I say net LOC and other fees here because, as many of you know, we partner with conventions and visitors bureaus as well to help offset the costs that we incur from a local organizing committee that we partner on to deliver a regatta. And obviously, when we think about venues, we have to also think about the revenue potential that we can drive to, one, reduce costs and make it more accessible. And third, we have to think about the contract duration with local organizing committees. The longer contract that we sign with an LOC, likely we'll have more preferred economics, but then that reduces our flexibility and we sit with contractual commitments. Local values, and we'll talk about this some more as I know this has been an important topic as of late. The most important thing here in the short term to know about is our venue and vendor policy, which Jenny and I have been working on since we first started, and for which we're going to continue to partner with the DEI committee and others. And we'll talk about timelines in a few moments. The second is really about state and metro values. When we think about the decision to have Masters Nationals in Florida and some of the challenges and the concerns that some of our members have had, as well as the boycott from some members, this is a really critical one for us to continue to be transparent about and explain what our rubric and methodology is for making a determination on venue selection. And I do think it is important here to look not just at state values, but at metropolitan areas that are within those states. And when we think about local values, one of the things that we look at consistently is the social issues that we've been talking about a lot, but also the issues of democracy and voting rights and voting issues that we think are really at the core of what it means to be in the United States. And as a national governing body, we also think are critical to make sure that we're evaluating. And then finally, venue convenience. And this gets to the question of access. Centralized location of venues, ability to have direct flights, lodging supply, quality, and cost, which are significant issues for us as we deliver, especially our national regattas. And then the amenities, entertainment, creating an environment in which our regattas and traveling to our regattas are an experience that's wonderful for the racing and the experience at the venue, but also outside the venue as well. So with that, what I also wanted to do is show how we kind of look at these two things in combination. The priorities that we have for regattas, and then the venue analysis factors that we're looking at. And while we can kind of debate which boxes are colored in and how they tie to it, I do think this is helpful for the group to see all the factors and puts and takes that we're looking at when we're determining venue selection to deliver against our priorities. And one thing I will point out here specifically on local values, one of the messages that we've heard from some of our members and stakeholders is about not feeling safe attending a regatta at a certain venue because of legislation or social priorities in that state. We do distinguish between safety from local values through the work that we're doing and will do with our venue and vendor policy to ensure that we're demonstrating our values and that the venues we go to are not just supportive, but active advocates of those values. And we visibly demonstrate that. We separate that from the element of comfort from local values outside of the venue where we have less control over those experiences. So I did want to highlight that as well. And then finally, talking about timeline and where you should look to us and hold us accountable for the work that we're doing moving forward. And I'll walk through these briefly as well. By Q4 of this year, we're looking to finalize our calendar for 2023 and 2024 regattas. And Sarah, back fresh off of being back from Youth Summer Nationals, is working feverishly on this with me and the team and multiple partners for finalizing that calendar. The second is the venue scorecard. So we are currently looking at over 30 venues at various states of readiness across the US. And that venue scorecard is going to fold into what you'll see further on in 2023 and beyond. And then finally, our venue and vendor policy. We will have an expectation of our venues to adhere and support the venue and vendor policy that we implement starting in 2023. So that's happening very closely in concert with Jenny and her team. In Q1 of 2023, we're going to look to extend our confirmation of venues through 2025. And knowing that one of the biggest requests that we've gotten from vast majority of our stakeholder base is to plan and list out the dates and locations of venues much further in advance. And I'm sure everyone here can appreciate the challenges of doing that when we're trying to balance all of these interests. But that is our goal by the end of Q1 of 2023, so that we can be confirmed for the next 3 years of regattas. The second is the RFP process that will be a natural offshoot of our venue scorecard, our work with the DEI committee, and our priorities over the strategic planning process. And that's going to be sending out requests to venues for their interest in hosting our regattas and sharing with them the expectations that we have for delivering regional and national regattas in the future. And then the other thing I'll note here is that I think we've had a lot of success with the regatta councils this year with the youth regattas, and we're looking to expand on that so we can partner regionally with groups who can work on the longer term venue plans for us, not just we've got to deliver this regatta in 3 months, but how can we start looking at venues and partnering together on creating those venues for the long term. As we look to 2023 through 2025, there's a slew of things that I'll talk through briefly. And while we're still working through these details, I want to share some of these areas with the group so you had visibility into the types of things we're thinking about. One, I think it's important to note that we have current contracts to fulfill that I think predate some or most of us on this call. And so as we think about venue development and our flexibility, we have to recognize that that same push-pull I talked about earlier about the pros and cons of contract duration, We're still living through that now as we think about the future of venue development and regattas. The second is around increasing regional competition for two reasons. One is that travel cost inflation has undoubtedly had an impact on travel this year for regattas. So I think now that we've seen this, regardless of, if somebody has a better crystal ball than I do, please share. I think we need to prepare for a future in which this continues to be an issue. So that's one reason to increase regional competition, specifically more opportunities for masters. The second reason is knowing that we've had a portion of our member base who has been unwilling to travel to certain states. One of our duties is to bring competition and foster competition. So if that means bringing it to you and bringing the competition to our members more, that's what we're going to do. So we're exploring how we can increase that regional competition as soon as 2023. The third is operational efficiencies. And I have so much respect and admiration for the team and what they're delivering from a regatta perspective, but we also have a ton of opportunity to become more efficient and effective so that we can maintain access costs that are reasonable for people to attend, and we can continue to grow our regattas. The fourth is means testing, which is a very challenging thing to do, but Jenny and I have talked about this. We would like to get to the point where individuals or clubs who are struggling to afford entry fees and travel at least do not have to pay for entry fees at regattas. So this is very early thinking, but as we look to increase the access to our sport, socioeconomic status is undoubtedly a significant component of that. So we believe there is an opportunity and an obligation for us to investigate how we might do that for our members. The next is sponsorship. I think the work that Tracy Brown and her team have been doing is spectacular as we look to grow the sport and grow sources of sponsorship. We haven't applied that yet to venue development and our domestic regattas, but I think that's something that we're very keen to explore to help supplement how we make all these moving pieces work well together. The next is around sort of festival experiences. You see this at some regattas to greater or lesser extents, but how can we make the experience of coming to a regatta about more than just the race? That will always be the top priority back to safety and fairness, but I think we have an opportunity to deliver a far more holistic experience for people coming to our regattas, making it more spectator friendly, making it type the event that you stay for the whole day, not just for one race and then book it. And then obviously, the longer term goal here around beginning venue development and build out. And as you move to 2026 and beyond, obviously this gets a little bit hazier, but continuing that build out. And one of the questions that I've asked our team to think through is, what would it take for us to deliver one course per region that is capable of hosting our largest nationals championship? And at the same time, having 3 courses per region that could support regional regattas. That seems to us to be sort of a healthy level of competition for venues, while ensuring that we're focusing our efforts on venues where we can continue to improve and develop those long-term strategic partnerships. So that was a whole lot that I covered, and I might be 3 minutes behind schedule, so I apologize for that. But I'll break now, and I haven't been looking at the questions, so I think I'm going to rely on the rest of the group to help me out so we can get started.
Rich, that was great. We do have some questions coming in, which I'm really happy about, and I'll just throw them to you from the top for now. The first one is asking if we have a location for Masters Nationals for 2023 already. It seemed like March 31st email referenced that it was set for Sarasota. So asking you that question.
Sure. So we had preliminary entered into an agreement with Nathan Benderson for 2022 and 2023. However, being fully transparent with this group, we are looking at alternatives, and we'll confirm that by Q4 of this year.
Okay, thank you. Philip, feel free to add more questions if you have follow-ups to that. The next one is from Sheila. Hi, Sheila. Besides the DEI committee, what other groups within rowing will have input into venue development and selection?
Sure. So I'll start this, and Sarah, feel free to jump in as well. But we'll obviously be working with the Regatta Councils regionally to share our viewpoints. We will be working directly with the LOCs and getting a sort of wisdom of crowds response as we look into scorecards and ranking across the categories that I spoke about. And then beyond the U.S. rowing staff, will obviously engage with the board as well on this. And so that's the plan over the next couple of months. But Sheila or others, if you have suggestions for other stakeholders who we should be working with internally on this, please reach out. Happy to do so.
Yeah, I would add there's regular engagement with coaching, club leadership on a very regular basis. And then Jenny made a good point too about the RETA group as well. That's an excellent group to chat to. But yeah, agreed. If people have other ideas on that, definitely let us know. The next one, Jenny, I'll give to you from Nathan Paxton asking about the DEI committee. I think, do you see it, Jenny?
Yes, I do. So it's asking, if the DEI committee is involved in this process and how to address when a venue is less than optimal. Will we be adding any openly LGBTQ people to the DEI committee? Last week, none of the people on the council identified as LGBTQ in their profiles. I would say that we don't kind of mandate or even encourage people to put their identities and how they identify either on the LGBTQ spectrum or racially or ethnically on their profiles. And we do have LGBTQ plus identifying people on the committee, but it's always a priority to continue to get as diverse a group as possible on that. So we'll keep that in mind as we move forward.
Thanks, Jenny.
I can take the next two. So from Michael, a question of, is Lake Natoma considered a fair course any longer? We're not going to talk about specific venues in this call, but as we look at our assessment of venues and we build out that scorecard, obviously fairness, whether it be natural features, geographic issues or otherwise, are going to be something that we look at very closely. The next question, Susan, what happened to Southwest Regionals this year? Will it happen again in 2023? I'm not quite sure whether you're talking about youth or masters. Let me start with masters. So the last time that we held a Southwest Masters Regional was in 2019. One was not held in 2021. One of the counterpoints to increased regional competition for masters is that historically, there's been a question about level of participation and engagement. When I've looked at the numbers going back to 2019, I think we can find a way to make it work. So I can't commit to anything at this point, but Southwest Masters Regional is something that we are looking at very closely. Just to round the bases, okay, it was Masters. So there we go.
All right, thanks, Susan, for the question. Sharon, hi, Sharon, U.S. Rowing Board member. Some regions are quite small and dense. The West and Midwest are very large. So 3 venues per region might be drivable for all members in some regions. How will we serve our larger regions?
Yeah. Sharon, it's a great question. I think 2 things. 1, 3 is the thought starter for how would we have to organize and structure and prioritize, not necessarily the final number. And I'd say 2, as we look at venue selection, one of the things we're going to be looking at very closely is distance from our members, looking at both the average and the distribution of that distance. And that will be both driving distance and it will be flight plan efficiency, including nonstop flights. So as we have some better analysis tools, we can look at that and kind of look at how can we serve the most members while not stretching ourselves too thin from a venue prioritization.
Thanks, Rich. The next from Hal Johnson. In your facts gathering and venue analysis, have you reached out to bring in the referee committee for their expertise?
They will be, absolutely.
Great, okay. And then Rhonda Nelson, Southwest 2019 is not a good example for attendance. It got moved to Long Beach at the last minute. You should look at attendance when it was at.
Sure. So Rhonda, what I'll say is that we've pulled data all the way back to 2003 for every hosted U.S. rowing regatta. So we are not just looking at 2019 as the yardstick for potential participation.
Great. A question from Philip. Is the venue vendor policy going to prohibit partnership with organizations or entities that contribute to hate groups, or prohibit partnership with organizations that have donated to hate groups within 5 to 10 years? Will there be morality clauses set in place to ban participation from organizations that have contributed to anti-LGBTQ+, anti-BLM, or anti-abortion organizations?
Yeah, I can take that one. These are all good questions. I would say transparently that we have not explicitly said this in the policy, but that we are requiring potential partners, Amanda, sorry if you could just keep it there so I can see it, to include their, in the RFP response, include their inclusion statements and initiatives, go through DEI training, and allow us to bring our values to the venues, which means flying flags, to ensure that our athletes are safe, and everyone on site is safe, and we can celebrate all diversity within our membership. So I think that these are really good questions to pose, but I would say we should consider them and will do, but we haven't explicitly said that in the policy.
Yeah, so the one thing I'll add to that in response to Philip's question is that we also have to look at this in conjunction with what existing contracts venues may have with vendors, and the expectations that we set, but also recognizing that if we have venues with multi-year contracts, that we have to look at the plan for moving past those when those contracts expire. So that's the only thing I want to make sure we're clear on, is that just like we have contracts, our venues sometimes have contracts with organizations that might not meet those requirements.
Thanks, Rich. This is I think we're going to give this one to Sarah. Teresa, hi, Teresa. Teresa's comment about venue and
I didn't get that.
Answer that one, Sarah.
Yep, definitely. So Teresa's talking about opening or letting everyone know where our regattas will be earlier rather than later. So we totally understand that. We are working to have everything for 2023 and 24 out by the end of September. So that is coming with contracts, and so we can announce it to you all. We know how important it is to book travel, book flights, book hotel rooms there. So we've already worked with quite a few venues for both youth and masters events to ensure verbal commitments, and now just working through the details.
Thanks, Sarah. Oh, sorry, the questions went away for a second. Sharon must have been listening in on a conversation that Rich and I had, I think, a week and a half ago about qualifying events for Masters National. So Rich, I'll give that one to you.
Sure, it's a really interesting idea, Sharon. So your first question about additional Masters regional championships, I think that gets back to the question that I answered a few minutes ago as more regional competition generally, and bringing the races to where our athletes are. So this group knows a little fun fact. We typically only have about 7% of our Masters members who attend Masters Nationals, which to me means we're not serving our Masters well and creating opportunities for them to compete where they want to compete. So I think that's more broadly a question. And then I think your point about, qualifications and doing something similar to what we do for youths, that's one way that we could potentially drive demand to those regional events where it's been a question mark in the past. But I also think a lot of Masters athletes have to choose between one regatta or the other. And so as we think about this, we have to look at, well, could we have a qualification element in the bid system, but still maintain an exhibition event for those who can attend both regattas, but still want the opportunity to participate? We're going to have to make trade-offs here, but we are actively discussing what that could look like. Thank
you. This is a question not about venues. I don't know if people have other venue questions specifically, or if Rich or Sarah, you want to answer this one about timing companies.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about this one with you more, Michael, but we're using Here Now for our timing at our regional and national regattas. So if there's a question about what's happening at registered regattas, we can take that up as well.
Super. I don't see other questions coming in, but people should definitely, and they don't need to be questions. You can also give us your feedback. And if you're not comfortable sharing feedback in the setting in the town hall, you can of course always email us or give us a call as well. This is something the team is taking very seriously, and putting a lot of time and thought and care into, and we're looking forward to being in the future in terms of venue selection, including timing of when we firm up venues so people can make plans accordingly. Is there anything else from Sarah, Jenny, or Rich?
I would just reiterate the openness to feedback, and if people have ideas and want to review these, I would love to have conversations. So feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to share my email in the chat.
Jenny, there's a follow-up question from John. Hi, John. You may have covered it, but I don't think we did, John. What are you looking for from a venue's inclusion statement?
Yeah, I think it's kind of their take on what inclusion means to them as an organization and initiatives that they have either kind of set as their vision or have put into practice. So a couple examples of these are our partners in Sarasota, Nathan Benderson and the Visitors Bureau there. We shared those inclusion statements and some of their initiatives in advance of Youth Nationals. So we're not kind of at this point in the policy dictating what that looks like explicitly. But we're also going to provide some guidance on our partners if they are looking to develop this, but haven't figured out exactly what that looks like yet. So I think we can provide a bit more detail in the policy, but right now it's kind of an ask to include that in their proposal, along with any work that they're currently doing on that front.
Thanks, Jenny. And John or anybody else, if you have other suggestions, definitely let us know. And as Jenny said, the DEI committee will be spending a fair amount of time. They already have a draft version of the venue and vendor policy, but we'll be getting more feedback from them as well. So it's certainly not something we're just working on quietly by ourselves by any means. Susan, thank you for your feedback in terms of the boycott. I'm sure we'll be very much in touch as we make plans for 2023 and beyond. Philip is asking a question around, will there be an opportunity for public comments, feedback on any sort of policy? I know you said we can expect this before the end of 22, but what opportunity will there be for a community input on the venue vendor policy? Jenny or Rich?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do, and we actually honestly haven't talked about this, is like we did for the transgender athlete participation policy, is provide an opportunity for anyone to join and provide feedback and questions before we're ready to release. So timing on that would probably, I don't want to commit to anything here, but sometime in Q4.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. And that was very helpful to do with the gender athlete participation policy. I think we held, was it 8 Zooms, Jenny and Rich? We spent a lot of time together on Zoom on that that topic, and it was really helpful to hear from so many stakeholder groups. So I don't think we would do 8, probably 1, maybe 2, but certainly we would look for feedback from folks because this is a really important piece. And hi, Richard. Question around how we derive revenue from an event. Well, sometimes we don't.
And there's a difference between gross revenue and profit, right? So our revenue primarily comes from entry fees for a regatta. At a regatta like Youth Nationals, we've also driven revenue through spectator ticket sales. But those are really the main components of revenue from our regattas. Now, when you think about the cost structure of our regatta, the big ticket items are LOC fees, which can sometimes be offset by a Convention and Visitors Bureau willing to invest because they can do things like put heads in beds and bring people to hotels or bring money to the local economy. Another significant cost is our referees and everything that we do to support them because they are essential to the fairness at a regatta. So that's the second category. The third is a lot of regatta operations, things like timing and registration fees, video streaming for national events. Those are all the costs that go into the direct costs that go into a regatta. And then obviously our team's travel, et cetera, goes into that as well. So those are the main buckets of the costs that offset the revenue from our regattas.
Thanks, Rich.
Yep.
I want to thank Jonathan Neer for saying he'll be ready to hit Sarasota loud and proud. Good. Excellent. We will see you there. And then we have Tammy asking or saying your Instagram post on June 1st, kicking off Pride Month, it was stated that part of your outreach for masters would include partnering with local organizations on site. What local organizations are involved for 2022 Masters? Our current stance is to ensure the safety of our athletes on site, take our values to these locations visibly, and by partnering with local organizations on site. So Jenny, this is for you, and maybe you can also mention who we had there. I spent a lot of time with them. They were fantastic at Youth Nationals.
Yeah, they'll actually be back. So there'll be 3 organizations who have committed so far. We have Project Pride, and I think I can probably include these in the link here. Yeah. So Project Pride is one. Fab AF is another. I'll get the link. And then the one that will be returning is called Also Youth. And Also Youth was there for Youth Nationals, and they tabled, they connected with people, they passed out resources. I think they met with every single US Rowing staff member. They felt very welcome, they said, by the end. So each of those organizations is looking to do the same thing and just increase visibility and be a resource to anyone on site and hopefully make everyone feel safe going to Sarasota.
Super. Now we're going to go over to Mike Wagner. Hi, Mike. Asking about, will US Rowing need to expand the number of certified referees to support the additional regional regattas? And I'm going to give that to Rich.
Yeah. I can't answer that question for what we do in 2023, but stepping back, the number of referees that we have, their availability and their proximity to venues is one of the biggest constraints to our growth as a sport moving forward to deliver fair competition. So in conversations with the referee committee and those groups and spending a lot of time with them this season at regattas, really working through the strategies that we can have to deliver a great experience and growth experience for referees and help really expand the funnel of new referees into the system. This is going to be one of the most important priorities for us over the next few years to grow the number of referees so we can grow the sport. It's a critical element of ensuring that we can deliver high quality regattas.
Thanks, Rich. And Terry, thank you for that comment. Saying the town hall and other efforts to make this process transparent are hugely important to blow up the black box in which decisions appear to be made. The scandal surrounding World Cup soccer, even the Olympics, have done a terrible amount of damage in terms of cynicism. I'm proud that US Rowing is making this effort. I think I can speak for my colleagues here too, we're so happy to hear that. And we are going to have misses along the way, but we can tell you with all certainty that we are in this to do it right and to do it well and to really do this together. So hearing from you all, that is why we're here. And you don't need to thank us because this is, again, why we're here. We want to make the best decisions for rowers and, give people a really positive experience and be inclusive throughout the process as well. So thank you for your thank you. But yeah, we're so happy to do this. And you live in Sarasota. Yes, and saying that many places the headlines do not accurately reflect the atmosphere and dedication to inclusion that people, not just rowers, believe in here. And I will say, now having spent a lot of time in Sarasota, I have seen that firsthand. It's a wonderful city, and I'm not going to comment on the state of Florida as a whole, but for sure, Sarasota is an incredibly inclusive place, and met some incredible people who have made that very clear. I don't see other questions come. Oh, here we go. Ward said, related to trans inclusion in venues, I wanted to share Erin Reed's map of states at risk for enacting further anti-trans legislation. One of my biggest concerns is that there are states on track to attempt legislation that will functionally prevent gender affirming care. I think some already have. Something as simple as traveling into a state with gender affirming medication could be challenged in the highest risk states. No amount of welcoming venue would offset that. Trans activists expect that Florida will attempt to make that law as soon as possible based on the signaling of the Supreme Court's recent session. Not a question, just sharing info. Rich, Jenny, do you want to respond to that, or do you want me to? I know
I'm just happy to start. I'm sure several of you have heard me say this many times. This is going to get harder, not easier. And so the amount of time that Jenny, Amanda, I, and others are spending looking at this landscape of legislation on a weekly basis across all of these issues and looking at state and local governments, this is going to be an important but very, very significant part of the work that we do to ensure we're staying close to what's happening here, boots on the ground in these states. So I don't think it at this point that anything that is out there changes our viewpoint on the decision to attend and demonstrate our values versus boycotting, but I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, I don't have much to add besides thanks for sharing that. And as Rich mentioned, we'll be kind of tracking legislation and all that's going on in our potential venue areas just to stay informed and make the best informed decision possible.
Sorry, dog was barking, so I muted myself. How will the removal of abortion rights for our female rowers affect the decision process? Do you have any plans in that direction?
So Rich, feel free to jump in, but I just would say abortion rights is on the list of a few social issues where we've started to build out this scorecard and this ranking system. We could, and as Rich kind of pointed out, include a number of social issues. So we need to kind of figure out from an organizational standpoint and with our stakeholders, what that looks like. And the most recent conversations have been around kind of weighing democracy, voters' rights, and that those elements instead of going the social issue completely. But it's abortion rights is one issue that we're tracking among a few at this point in time. I don't know, Rich, if you want to jump in.
Nope, I think you covered it.
Yeah, like Rich said, this is getting harder, not easier, almost by the day. So we understand the concerns here, absolutely. Any other questions? And we really appreciate the comments and the questions coming in. And please know this is not the only opportunity to ask questions or to give feedback. And you can also send us feedback on this format too. This is the first time we haven't done a sort of broad town hall and focused on a specific topic, which is what we're trying out moving forward. Philip, sorry, said not to be read. Okay. So any other questions coming in from people or comments? If not, we will give 10 minutes back to everyone, to their evenings. Okay. Sarah or Jenny or Rich, is there anything else you'd like to include before we close it out?
No, I don't think so.
Just thank you all very much for joining tonight.
Yeah, really, thank you all, and we'll see you all soon.